Today we're going to look at the TRVL LX, an updated version of Nuna's popular auto-folding ultra-compact with larger wheels, as well as a few other changes, generally considered by parents either for travel or to complement an urban or car-based lifestyle. So let's jump straight into it then, going over the model from top to bottom and examining its advantages and disadvantages in terms of child comfort, ease of use, performance and mechanics, before ending with a discussion of which uses and lifestyles it may suit, and whether we feel it's worth its price. And beginning with some stats, the TRVL LX clocks in at 7.7 kilos and folds down to 34 by 52 by 71 centimeters. It can carry 22 kilos in the seat and 4.5 kilos in the underslung storage basket. When it comes to child comfort, the TRVL LX's upright position is a bit too sloped, unfortunately, while the reclined position is near flat and newborn acceptable. Advertising for the model also suggested a newborn apron tucked into the leg rest, though this feature is unfortunately absent from the European version. The mechanism for reclining the seat has been changed from the original TRVL and is easier to use, but also feels more flimsy, involving what seems to be a spring-loaded winding mechanism pulling on cords adjacent to the support straps. This mechanism is attached to a backboard that is entirely sewn within the textiles, which would make repair difficult should it malfunction, and also means that the textiles are not machine washable. As far as the dimensions of the seat are concerned, the TRVL LX has a width of 34 centimeters and a total length for the sitting surface of 79, meaning the combined lengths of the backboard, baseboard, and albeit somewhat weak and sagging leg rest, as well as a total longer length of 115 when taking into account the distance to the front frame mounted footrest and the quite ample space beneath the canopy. In general, these are pretty middle-of-the-road dimensions for a stroller of this sort, with the only real bigger negative being the height of the backboard, 43 centimeters, which limits headroom in the reclined position for older toddlers. As far as other aspects of the seat are concerned, the textiles feel acceptably durable, there's decent padding, and, while the harness only has a 3-point connection essentially, its top-mounted release button and magnetic feature make it more comfortable to use than with a lot of competing models. Lastly, when it comes to sun coverage, the TRVL LX's canopy has been improved from the original version by adding to the already present sun flap an extra zipped-in hood section that makes it more enclosing. Moving on to parent comfort, the TRVL LX's handle has a fixed height of 108 centimeters, while its shopping basket is good-sized and comfortably accessible. When it comes to folding, the TRVL LX auto-folds, meaning that you just need to depress the button and trigger on the handle and give it a little push for the stroller to complete the fold itself, ending up in a self-standing position. This is naturally quite handy during situations where you'll also be carrying a child, though it's important to note that the mechanics involved are a bit more complex than average, which brings with it some durability concerns that I'll discuss in a moment. When folded, the TRVL LX is comfortable enough to carry by the bumper bar and also has a strap that's too short for carrying the stroller under your arm, but will allow you to sling it over your shoulder like Santa's sack. The folded size of the model is not too bad for packing in the trunk or storing away at home, but is well above the IATA's guidelines for cabin luggage, even if you remove all the wheels and bumper bar, making it a model you'll generally have to gate check with regards to air travel. As far as how the TRVL LX feels to use, all of the activation mechanisms are easy and intuitive, while the chassis, despite having decently thick bars, is loose at the hinged connection points, causing the handle arms to bend and strain a bit during tipping and steering, which makes the model feel a bit fragile and rickety in my opinion. When it comes to driving, the model's larger than average wheels, 8.3 inches in the back and 6.3 in the front, combined with decent suspension, make the TRVL LX capable of tackling some degree of harder ground, such as cobblestones and smoother off-road conditions, though the lighter and complicated design of the chassis mean that overdoing it in such conditions is likely to accelerate wear and loosening. Alright, let's move on to the mechanics of the model then, starting with the handle, folding system, and the general structure of the chassis, where, as I mentioned, the internal components involved are pretty complex, with 2 sets of wires and locking points, and with an unfortunate use of plastic for some of the key components, all of which creates a strong potential for symmetry problems that might lead to the folding system getting more fiddly or outright failing down the road as a result of wear. We went into a lot of detail about this in our review of the original TRVL, which shares the same system, and I've linked that video in the description in case you're interested in getting a deeper understanding. But suffice it to say here that though not the weakest folding system out there, this complexity does lead me to really only recommend the model for lighter use, such as an occasional travel stroller or for keeping in the trunk and using for shorter trips. And the fact that the LX version has larger wheels is a little worrisome in my opinion, as it means that the model may come to be purchased for regularly tackling rougher environments, which is simply not sturdy enough to handle. Beyond the folding system, below the level of the central folding hubs, I would note though that the TRVL LX has good cross support from both the rear and front frames, as well as from an inner skeleton that helps to facilitate the fold, and there's unlikely to be significant loosening problems in this area at least. Moving down to the rear frame, the model again has decent suspension, but the brake system is wire-based and lacks an adjustment screw for fine-tuning tension in the wire over time, which makes it harder to deal with wear problems that may show up if the system isn't lubricated occasionally. When it comes to the wheels, there's a little looseness in how they lock within the housings, which can be a little noisy, though I don't necessarily suspect that the connection here is apt to get too much looser over time, even with the added weight of larger wheels. The foam tires are relatively smooth and don't provide much in the way of traction, but going on our experience with the original TRVL, the material is at least fairly durable. Looking lastly at the front frame, there's a bit of suspension built into the front forks, and the model has decent swivel locks. The front wheels sit even tighter within their housings than the rear wheels, meaning that again, despite being larger sized, I'm not too worried about the wheels getting too much looser, provided the model isn't used too much over rougher ground. So, would I recommend getting the TRVL LX then? Not really. Despite the better newborn setup, depending on where you live, longer canopy, and increased wheel size, giving the model an advantage over the original TRVL, without the ability to fold down to cabin luggage dimensions, even if it had meant removing the wheels, the truth is that strollers of similar size and similar, if not better strength, that also have non-reversible seats are something of a staple on the lower end of the market. And even with a fancy fold and a few finer details, for me, it's pretty hard to justify the model's relatively high price tag in comparison to some other options out there. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, please subscribe, as this sort of support really helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you're currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the link in the description. Thank you.